Hello, Amber. Thank you so much
Hey,
for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad that you guys asked me to be on here and then I get to connect with you both more here and talk about all the juicy things.
That's actually me and Amber. A little quick background. We met right before COVID exploded, and we were in a group coaching program together. And I witnessed Amber completely transform in so many levels. And Amber can attest to this and share a little bit about how forming a relationship with Mary Magdalene has affected her life and transformed the way that she relates to her body, to her relationship to her husband, and so many other things. But I'll let Amber dive into that and share a little bit more about herself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we did yeah, we did go through. I feel like COVID was such a portal for me because we all had to like go inside. I feel like nature just like sent us to our room. And it was exactly what I needed because I was like so on the go all the time, and I was just like just one of those people who was like very unconsciously just like running through my life, like just doing all the things and like going and like taking on too many things, never like having boundaries or saying no to things. And I wasn't connected to myself at all. And because I wasn't connected here, I was like not wanting other people to connect with me. So I almost
Mm,
had it like an armor or something
mm,
around me. And it was like feeding like toxically feeding my ego, of like I can do all these things. And then when I slowed down, I remember like just purging these emotions, like just like from the depths of me. And
mm.
this I mean I went through a massive spiritual awakening, which I've gone through many before. I'm in recovery and I've been sober about 10 and a half years, and I went through a spiritual awakening then, and then about 4 or 5 years ago I went through another one. But this one was so different than the ones I've gone through because it felt like, I don't know, it just felt like sweeter in a way. And I think it is because I was connecting more of this like feminine frequency that I hadn't connected with before, and just learning more about the way that it manifests in the physical world, like through I mean just all these different ways. And yeah, it completely changed my life in multiple ways.
Mm. And how did you first come across Mary Magdalene? For those of you that have no idea who she is or what she's about, or yeah, I'll just give a little bit more of a
Mm-hmm.
background to our listeners.
Yeah, well, yeah, so it started for me. It's funny. It started right before COVID, and I honestly, like I started having these like things weird, and I won't get into all these stories. I have them recorded on my YouTube channel if someone that gets really curious and wants to know what they are. But like weird things started happening in my life. Like very bizarre. Like I went on a road trip one time and had like hawks like jumping out at me, like, and I went all the way from North Carolina down to Louisiana and then back, and I saw 12 hawks. Like I started counting after like the third one. I'm like, I should feel like I should be counting these. And I saw 12 and I was like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? And so weird stuff like that started happening. And someone brought up her name at
Mm.
I was going out, I went to dinner with a friend, and she just like randomly was like, Mary Magdalene and Jesus were partners and they had a tantric relationship. And I was like, whoa. And I just like couldn't stop thinking about it after she said that, and I literally became obsessed. Like if I was in the desert, drowned or like dying of dehydration, and someone handed me like the only glass of water for like thousands of miles, like that water was Mary Magdalene. Like
Mm.
I was like, I mean, it's totally like, I don't even know what it was, but I was just receiving all of this information like all day long. I was listening to podcasts, I was reading things, YouTube, like, and it was like I needed to, it was like I don't even know where why, but it was like I needed to have this information. And I learned everything I could about her, and just a little bit of background about her. A lot of people, I guess if you're live in the States, or I'm making a generalization right now, but a lot of Christians believe that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, and that she was forgiven by Jesus, and that she became one of his disciples because he forgave her. And she was able to live like a, I don't know, like a blessed life, I guess, after he forgave her. So that's a lot of the, she's kind of like a, not like a nobody, but she's not that important in the Bible, other than that story. But in my research, I've learned that that is not true. And there's actual like evidence of this, that that's not true. And that the reason why a lot of people think that is that the Catholic Church, there was a Pope hundreds of years ago that made that assumption. And he actually taught that in to the Catholic Church. And so it's been literally carried on until not even that long ago. I think 2016, the Catholic Church came out and publicly said, we were wrong about this assumption about Mary Magdalene, that she is not a prostitute, and that we're going to give her there's a feast day now, which is like a really high honorship of of her, and that's on July 22nd every single year is her feast day. But and there's no evidence of all of this, but this is what I believe to be true. These are like more channeled messages from Mary Magdalene, is that she is the partner of Jesus, and that they were equals, and that they created this ministry together. And I believe that they engaged in sex magic, which rose their it's kind of similar to the what people teach in Kundalini, the raising of the energy through the chakras. And I believe that that's why Jesus was able to do what he did, and like made miracles happen. And I believe that Mary was like the person, in the sidelines, and she couldn't speak her truth back then, because if she did, I mean, women were so severely
Oppressed.
yeah, like they were, I mean, there was no equality. I mean, women were not, I mean, not important is not even like the word. Like they were only good for breeding. You know what I mean? Like an animal.
And Amber, I think there's no mistake why the Pope at that time, who named her a prostitute, to disempower women in positions of leadership. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And that is like, I'm getting chills with you saying that, because there actually was a oh man, the name of it, the Council of Nicaea, if anyone's heard of that before. It was a gathering of all the church officials,
Right.
and because and they decided what was going to be in the Bible and what wasn't. So it was literally these men that came together and were like, this is what Christianity is going to be. And they literally took out every woman who had written anything and destroyed it. Like there is a Gospel of Mary. She's the only woman who's written an actual gospel, and it's been destroyed. All of the copies have been destroyed, other than 3 they found in 3 different languages, but there was only pieces that they were able to get. So if you like Google the Gospel of Mary, you can only see like a few pages that are like it doesn't even really make sense, because we don't have so much of it. But so yeah, I mean, they literally did, they literally took this whole religion into their hands and were like, this is what we want it to be, and we don't want women to have any power, or to know that women had any power in the past.
Right. Yeah, and this divine union, this magic that they were able to create, and it just goes to show of our capacity and our potential, that there's so much more that we can access as human beings, especially when we're in right relationship, divine relationship to another human being. And I mean, they were probably very aware of that at the time. And of course, it's also about the suppression of the feminine, this energy that is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and just the fact that she didn't have a feast day until 2016 is so telling, and we didn't even know that she had a gospel until the 50s. So this is very, and it's funny, because it kind of is in alignment with our culture, and the way that our culture is accepting more, or the feminine is kind of pushing her way into, to be seen. It's like in the 50s, I feel like the things started to change. Yeah. And then now, or at least since 2000, I feel like things are really have shifted in the past last, 5-7 years,
Oh yeah, the consciousness is definitely coming alive and rising within all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. And I honestly, I feel like her her message has not come out until these times, because we weren't ready to hear it. Like if it had come out anytime before that, I really full-heartedly believe it wouldn't have been received, because we
Mhm.
weren't, I don't believe that the world was ready to I mean, a lot of people still aren't ready to hear it, but I don't think it would have been received if it hadn't come out until when it did. That's
Amber,
my
yeah, can you please speak to some of her messages or the essence of her message?
Yeah, totally. And I feel like if there's any reason why I have absorbed all the information I have, it's for that reason, because I feel like I've been chosen or something to speak about her message. But yeah, and I just want to say, like, all of this is my interpretation of what her message is. And if anyone doesn't resonate or doesn't agree or whatever, that's okay, that we can all have our opinions. And if you are curious to get more about her, like, please just do your own research. Like, I feel like everyone has their own interpretation, or this is my filter, and so I encourage you to go explore your own filter if that is calling to you. But I believe Mary Magdalene, I think that there's a lot of power in her relationship, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with relationship, especially in the heart space.
Mm.
In her gospel, she talks a lot about the heart space and the soul. And my interpretation of what she's communicating is that the soul is here in this physical world to experience things through the heart, or at least that's maybe where our power is. And she says that there's these has these things called the seven powers, which is, like, I believe, to be seven different layers of our ego, and
Mm.
that they're not bad. Like, some of them they're kind of similar to the seven deadly sins, like anger and I can't remember exactly what she labeled them as, but I interpret her communicating that these seven different layers are things that we experience as humans. Like, we experience emotions, we experience jealousy, like, I mean, we have these humanness, and that we get to embrace that, to live from our heart space. And that shows up in our relationships with a partner, as a mom. The other thing about Mary Magdalene, that there is some evidence about this, that she had a daughter named Sarah, and when Jesus was crucified, she was pregnant and she escaped to the south of France, and and had her daughter there, and created this community, which I believe were called the Cathars. I have another video about that on my YouTube about Cathars if you're interested. I won't get into that now. But this community was all about what I just said, like honoring the feminine, honoring our humanness. Sex for pleasure was another thing that they practiced, which was like,
Woo!
yeah. And it was totally bizarre back then. I mean, this was like when the Catholic church was being born, and another example of the can't think of the word, but of trying to push down the feminine, is that the Catholic Church during the Crusades literally murdered all of them. Like, all of them were killed by the Catholic Church because they were practicing these things. But I believe that, like what I just said, that we're coming, that that consciousness is coming back because the world is ready for it now. But yeah, another pieces of her message, what I've experienced in my personal life is the essence of intimacy, like really having intimacy with myself, like not just like not, and I don't mean like just physical intimacy, but like all encompassing intimacy, like being able to hold that space for myself and letting myself, it had to start with me, I'll say. Like, I started self-pleasuring, I started being angry, like screaming, like just letting myself be whatever I wanted or needed to be in the moment, and then letting myself just be accepted by me. And then I was able to open up more with other people, like my husband, and and the, and then I feel more available for other people, like my daughters, and so I get to mother them in a way that I wasn't mothered. So that's in a nutshell of what I feel like I've personally experienced from learning about her message.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, when I feel into her energy, it just feels like pure unconditional love. And I love what you said about the soul coming through or expressing itself through the heart space, because in Taoism they also refer to the heart as the spirit's palace. And yeah, it really is about embracing our humanity as really powerful medicine for becoming becoming who we're meant to become through embracing with love. And that sounds, it's more challenging to actually practice in day to day when you're being triggered, challenged, when things aren't going your way or things kind of fall apart around you. But she's so grounded and rooted in that space of love, and they called her the disciples of the disciples, correct?
Yeah, they because and it was known, with the disciples back then, that Mary was special to Jesus. I mean, actually there's multiple gospels written by other disciples that they talked about the relationship between Mary and Jesus, and that they would kiss, and that they would spend time alone, and that he would give Mary, teachings to teach the other disciples. And those gospels were taken out. They're not in the Bible. They're in the a collection called the Gnostic Gospels, and that
Was Philip one of them?
Yeah, the Gospel of Philip and the Gospel of Thomas talk specifically about their relationship. But
That's weird. Those were taken out.
Yeah, well, they didn't want
Right.
people to know that. Well, and there's a
Exactly.
whole story of Jesus being celibate, and him not, him like, whatever that
Right.
story was that
Very
they were wanting to carry on.
false narrative to brainwash
Exactly.
people into believing their belief systems for control
Exactly.
and power.
Exactly.
Right.
Control. Yeah.
And I do think that when people are fully in their sexuality and expression, like that has life force energy, that has power, and people are intimidated by that. So it makes sense that other people wouldn't want that to happen.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, and that they were scared, I think, of their power, just like the witches, like during the witch trials. Like that's another perfect example of people being scared of that feminine power and like what they can create, and or do, or it's and so yeah. I mean, I just have to say, like, I am so passionate about talking about this now, because like this, all of that magic and that medicine is here now for us to, because we have freedom now. Like we all have, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have that freedom to practice whatever we want, or talk about whatever we want, and be whoever we want.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced this in my own life, and this piece of like healing our relationship to our sexuality and coming into right relationship with our bodies, when the channel between ourselves is so pure and so loving, and our sexual energy, our pleasure, when we're tapped into that energy, like a woman is radiant, she's magnetic, she is literally unstoppable. And that, people who are in that space, they cannot be controlled or manipulated. And it really does transform the way we live our lives on such a deep level. And it's like the butterfly effect. When we do that work, there are a lot of people out there who are not as privileged or do not have access to this information, or they're, you know, women are being suppressed in many parts of the world and violated and harmed, and that is even more reason to do this for ourselves, because we are able to, and no one is holding us back but ourselves. And it's, you know, it's a very deep process of shedding all those layers of conditioning, the, like you mentioned, the barriers around our heart. And so reclaiming our sexuality really is kind of that final piece for so many of us who've tried so many different paths.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Definitely.
And was this was a part of kind of this like third spiritual awakening you had later in life?
Yeah, I just have to say something.
Yes, please
I
do.
don't know why I'm being called to say this right now. And this is an intimate thing about me that I'm going to share, but so I'm a little nervous. But I had not, my husband and I struggled a lot after having my daughter sexually, and we didn't have sex for 2 years after I had my daughter, or before and after. But when I went through this awakening is the only thing I can really think of to describe it. But I started to get back in touch with myself. I started to experience that intimacy again with him. It was like this whole other world that I didn't even know existed in our relationship, and just like in general. Like I didn't even know that I could be held in that way, you know, like, and or seen in that way. And and now that we've had our second daughter, and feeling, I mean, it's like this time in comparison to the last time when I was in the postpartum time is so different. It's like a completely different relationship, you know. And I don't, that was a little random, but I just felt like I needed to
Not
say
random.
that.
And would you say that because you're able to create that deep intimacy with your husband, like that essentially started first with creating that intimacy like with yourself, and so being able to practice that with your partner came a lot easier?
Totally. Yeah, I would not have been able to, because it felt, I think I was trying to before I started with myself, and it was way too overwhelming. I mean, and I've learned that through being in recovery too. Like you know, they say a lot oh, I'm just going to say in AA, which is where I got sober, that, you know, you get to get sober first before getting all the things like the relationship or the job or whatever. Because if you don't have your sobriety, then you won't keep anything else, because your foundation is not stable, you know. And so I feel it's the same kind of way with my intimacy, with my relationship, with my sexuality, because I get to grow that foundation with me, or I had to gain a foundation. I didn't even have a foundation. Like I literally had no connection to my sexual, like being a sensual, there was nothing. Like I was totally shut down. And when I started to develop that, I was able to experience it with him, because the door had opened, you know.
Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable, and I really appreciate it, because that's a part of our intention with this podcast, is to create safe space and to normalize these conversations, because this is reality for many women and mothers, especially, you know, after childbirth. I've heard, I don't have children yet, but so, you know, people can relate to this, and then they start to feel like they're not alone. And again, there's possibility, because at any age we're able to reclaim sexual sovereignty. And like everything, it always begins within. So thank you for eloquently expressing that and just being really open. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Amber, to know how the rose medicine is connected to Mary Magdalene, or if there's a connection there. Like I know there is, but maybe you can elaborate on that more.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good question because for a long time I knew that there was a correlation, but I didn't know what it was. And so I finally have tapped into that. And this is what I believe to be true. Again, I encourage everyone to go find their own interpretation. But mine is that I personally believe that in the birth of existence, I guess I'll say that there is this frequency. I don't really know how else to say it, but of this, it's almost like I'm just going to call it the feminine, and a lot of people call that frequency Sophia, or that Sophia is the beginning of all that. Sophia is kind of known as like the is similar to God. What a lot of people say is God is Sophia.
Sophia Christ consciousness. The
Mhm.
Sophia Code is a great book for that.
Yeah, 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 and that creation, and I will say, just a side note, that Sophia, her symbol can there's I think I can't remember what it's called, but there's like a beetle or something that is a symbol of Sophia, and it's this beetle that can actually like birth itself. And so that's kind of what people believe, that where it came from, that this frequency birthed herself. And I personally believe that it's shown up in all these different forms and ways in our existence. So it's shown up as certain people, like, or as gods, like Isis, was the mother goddess in the Egyptian culture. A lot of people know of her, or in the Greek, Aphrodite, and then in the stars, Venus, and then as a plant, the rose plant. And so, and how these are all connected is they all have this frequency of femininity. And like the planet of Venus is the feminine love relationship planet. And in this is blows my mind. This is why I love astrology, but I also love specifically Venus, because if you watch Venus's orbit in space, like from Earth, if you literally track her orbit from Earth, she does this thing where she's constant, like every year and a half, she goes like up above the Earth, and then she goes down under the Earth, and then she goes up above the Earth. And she does that for a total of 8 years. And in that 8 years, she creates literally a 5-petaled pentagram, which looks like a rose. Like it literally looks like an open rose in the sky. If you look at it like on paper, or you can Google the orbit of Venus and you can see.
Right, I've seen that on YouTube. It's extraordinary.
It is, yeah. And a lot of people use that sign as like a feminine expression. That symbol is on a lot of people's Instagrams and websites and stuff. And
yeah, it's a part of my logo as well.
yeah.
Yeah, when you look at the rose intuitively, I mean, it's like so sensual and looks like a yoni, and it's kind of very iconic all over the world for being like what you give your lover, and on Valentine's Day. So I'm sure it's all connected.
Exactly. Yeah. And the rose plant is like one of the oldest plants that we know of in existence on Earth. And that it has one of the highest frequencies too, compared to all other plants. And it shows, because roses aren't cheap. If you go to the grocery store and you go look at all the flowers, the roses are the most expensive, because it holds that frequency that's so valuable and pungent and deep and powerful. So in a short answer, that's
No, that was perfect.
Yeah,
I have been more obsessed with roses recently. I'll just show you quick because we're on video, but this is my new obsession, rose water. And I've been like, after every bodywork healing session that I do, I literally just douse myself in the rose water, and I just feel this immediate clearing and cleansing of energy, and it's so good.
Yeah.
And then also having like fresh roses in my room has been a favorite thing that I've been doing lately. So and I feel that frequency from it, and just having it in my space is really nurturing for me.
Yeah, Janessa and I didn't know we were both doing this, but we both put rose petals in our cacao this morning.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, and I just want to say for anyone listening, like if you are interested in tapping more into it, there's so many different ways to connect with this frequency, specifically like with rose medicine, like what you're saying, Janessa, or like drinking rose tea or
Yeah, please tell us more how we can integrate this into our everyday life.
yeah. I mean, I love taking ritual baths, and like I just love, like I personally call the bath the womb because it's like
Absolutely.
when when we're in the womb, we're in like a bath of water and warm water, and that's like feeding us, literally, like that's what the amniotic or fluid does in the womb. Is it like the food that I eat goes into the fluid and like feeds the baby. And so that's kind of what I picture when I get into a bath. And I love using rose petals, and I have like a container of rose petals that I use almost every time I take a bath. And same with me, like I have the rose water that I use a lot. Another thing that I haven't heard a whole lot of people doing, but I did this, and I want to do it like at least once a year. It was so powerful for me. I did a oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of it, but I guess I'll just call it a rose attunement. It's kind of like how people use ayahuasca, but I did it with rose medicine. And so I took like I made a rose tea, and I had to like pretty much ferment it. Like it was like a really dark water rose tea. So it was
Oh,
really
wow.
like potent. And it was like a 6-week long thing that I did where I was fasting in different ways, and then I was drinking this tea every day and listening to these chants, I guess I'll call it that. And that was so powerful for me. I was working with a woman. I'm just going to give her a shout out. Her name's Laura, Lara, Charlotte. She lives in New Zealand, and it was so powerful for me. And that was probably one of the most like shifting ways that I worked with rose medicine, probably because it was just a potent expression of it. So
When you were saying that, I was like, are you going to be guiding people through these?
I would love to at some point, but I'm not qualified to do that yet. But yeah, no, I went through this woman and she's the only person I've ever met who does that. She used to run an ayahuasca retreat center in Peru for years. She did that. And then it's similar. She went through a similar thing with the Rose Medicine Awakening thing, and ended up bringing, her experience with running ayahuasca retreats into rose medicine. And it's that was really powerful for me. But yeah.
Incredible. And what are some of your favorite resources to learn about this work?
That's a good question. I've looked everywhere. I mean, Laura Charlotte, is I'm giving her a shout out because I did the rose attunement with her, and she just works deeply with rose medicine. She does different trainings and stuff. But there's a couple people who do this work that I found, and I love, everyone has their different style.
Yeah.
So
I meant more so books, but
you
can finish this thread, and I'm curious. And I'm curious how people can also work with you, and what things that you offer as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if anyone wants to get more like information about some of the things that I mentioned, I have a YouTube channel where I've recorded all this. And you can just look up my name, Amber Brown Short.
I'll put all the links in the description too for people that want to go straight there.
Yeah, and as far as books go, my two that I always recommend, and these are kind of the most mainstream right now, is one of them is called Mary Magdalene Revealed, written by Megan. I can't remember her last name right now, but Mary Magdalene Revealed. That one is a great book to start out with because she has like a PhD. She's like very academic. She's really smart. She has a PhD in religious studies, and she's specified on this whole feminine piece with religious studies. And she wrote this book about Mary Magdalene that is like really it just like puts it all out there of like what's true and what's and what she believes the truth is as far as like what we have for evidence. But if you want to go more of the spiritual route, there's a channeled version called
Magdalene manuscript.
yes, thank you.
By Tom Kenyon.
Yes, and that is probably one of my favorite books I've ever read. And it goes very deeply into sex magic. And it is, and the manuscript, which is like the first, like, I don't know, 50 pages or something, that storyline of what was, channeled from Mary Magdalene, I believe to be the truest version I've ever come across. And then, Tom and his wife go into their whole journey around sex magic and everything that they know about it and how to do it. And
he's an incredible sound healer with his voice. If you never heard what he channels the whales and all these really powerful frequencies. Wow. Have you never heard his music? My goodness.
I haven't heard him either, but Sam is very much influenced by him, my friend.
Wow.
Right.
So that's interesting.
Wow. That is so cool. I did not know that about them. Yeah.
It's funny because I started reading the Magdalene manuscript in my early 20s and I didn't finish it. And I felt like the mysteries kind of went into dormancy. Like they gave me like this little taste and like revealed themselves, but then they went dormant again. And like recently in the past year or two, I feel like they're really like starting to come alive in my awareness. And I've also listened to half of the Mary Magdalene Revealed on Audible, so I'm slowly working through that one. But yeah,
those are my two favorite, and they're the easiest to start out with. So yeah, those are probably the best resources that I have. But yeah.
And what work do you do specifically? Because I know you are so multifaceted and talented, and you have lots of incredible offerings.
Yeah, I do coaching, and I work with people one-on-one with that. And and in my coaching, I my specialty I feel like is trauma work, because that's all my background is in trauma recovery. And so I love working with people, especially on the intimacy side, like how that shows up in their relationships or how it blocks them through, really just their life. But I also, have this like other influence to it, which is what we've talked about, like this femininity influence, as well as astrology. And I have a big passion for how astrology affects us and how, and just the insight it can give us. So I do readings for people, as well as hold a monthly astro circle that I take an astrological event and then bring some kind of lesson from it that we can use in our personal lives. So I do that once a month, plus my one-on-one work. So that's what I got right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And Amber, I would love to ask you one last question that we ask all our guests before we sign off. And that is, what is bringing you the most pleasure right now?
That's a good question. Well, I'm 3 months postpartum right now. So the thing that is bringing me the most pleasure, honestly, I mean, there's a lot of things, but I would say the things that are the most is I'm just going to say it because I don't know why I have some resistance around it, but it's
say it.
It's not even that, like, whatever, but it's going to the gym. I guess because like the gym was like, I was always like, ugh, but like, I don't know what it is. Like, I just like, first of all, I get my alone time, and I just like get to like listen to my podcast and my headphones. And I just like get to like just be back in my body. You know what I mean? My body isn't being like used for somebody else's needs. It's just like, I'm just like doing whatever the fuck I want, like in the gym. It's like my safe place right now. It's like my retreat center over there. So that's where yeah.
Yeah, I also too have had a desire to go back in the gym because I used to be an active gym goer, and I'm noticing that like that desire is coming up again. So
Yeah.
I'm stoked
Yeah.
for you. You're getting to
Yeah, thank you.
experience that.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, and I will say one more thing. I was thinking about it when you guys were talking about your rose tea, but I'm obsessed with these kombucha drinks right now. And it actually has
Ooh.
rose in it, but it's called Pure Love. It's so funny that we're talking about this and I'm drinking this, but it's called Pure Love, and it has rose, hibiscus, and blood orange in it. It's so good.
Yes.
I'm like
So
obsessed
feminine.
with. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to add, Samantha, at all?
Just thank you so much for being our first ever guest to the Pleasure Alchemy podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored. I always love everything that Janessa and you guys are up to. And I'm so honored that you guys asked me to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, we're grateful for you too. Thank you all for listening and tuning in, and we'll catch you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.